The bank called my cell at 7:42 a.m. while I was sitting in my car outside the hospital, one hand on my coffee and the other reaching for my badge. Elaine Whitaker's voice was careful when she asked Mrs. Cox, "Did you authorize your husband to transfer $209,684.73 out of your joint account this morning?" Before I could answer, Adrian texted me, "Don't embarrass me by asking questions at work." Then Elaine said the transfer request had my electronic signature on it, and the money was going to Cox Legacy Holdings LLC, a company I had never heard of. If you're watching this, tell me what country you're from and what time it is where you are. And if stories about family money betrayal and hard boundaries speak to you, stay with me and subscribe. 6 months before that phone call, if you had asked anyone who knew us, they would have said Adrian and I were careful people. Not rich, not flashy, careful. We lived in a 2-story brick house on a quiet street in Raleigh, North Carolina, the kind of neighborhood where people waved from porches but still noticed every new car in a driveway. I worked as an operations manager for a regional hospital system, which meant my days were full of staffing problems, budget meetings, patient flow reports, and emergencies that never looked dramatic on paper but could ruin an entire department by lunchtime. Adrian worked as an independent financial advisor. He had a calm voice, neat suits, and a way of explaining money that made people feel smarter for listening to him. At church fundraisers, neighborhood cookouts, family birthdays, he was the man people pulled aside to ask about retirement accounts, refinancing, small business loans, credit scores. He never looked like someone who needed money. That was part of why I trusted him. When we got married, I already owned a small condo near downtown Raleigh. I had bought it before I met Adrian, back when I was still proving to myself that I could build something no one could take credit for. My mother used to say I was too independent for my own good, usually right before asking me to pay a bill for a cousin, cover a repair, or help with groceries because I was the stable one. By 38, I had learned to be generous with limits, or at least I thought I had. When Adrian and I started talking seriously about long-term planning, he said all the right things. "We're not roommates," he told me one night at our kitchen island, laptop open between us. "We're married. Our money should have a direction." I agreed with the direction. I just didn't know then that direction and control were not the same thing. After we married, I sold the condo. The market was good, and Adrian said it made sense to use the proceeds to strengthen our household position. Part of the money went into paying down debt and improving our home. A large portion went into our joint savings account. Over time, between my condo proceeds, my annual work bonus, and what we both added from our paychecks, that account grew to a little over $210,000. Adrian called it our foundation. Said we could use it for a second property, maybe a rental, maybe an investment that would give us breathing room later. I wanted breathing room. I had spent too many years being the person everyone called only when something broke. At first, I checked the account regularly. Then Adrian suggested we use one financial dashboard instead of separate apps and passwords. "It'll be cleaner," he said. "I can track everything and send you summaries." He did send summaries. They were polished, organized, color-coded. Too polished maybe, but I didn't see that then. I saw effort. I saw a husband using his expertise to make our life easier. The first time I asked for the actual login instead of the summary, he looked more disappointed than angry. "Gianna," he said, leaning back in his chair like I had hurt him, "I thought we were past this." "Past what?" "Past treating me like I'm one of your hospital vendors." That stung because he knew exactly where to press. At work, I was paid to question numbers, verify invoices, review reports, and make sure no department quietly bled money. At home, he made those same instincts feel cold. "I'm not auditing you," I said. "Then why does it feel like you are?" That became his pattern. He never said, "You can't see the money." He said, "Why don't you trust me?" He never said, "I'm in charge." He said, "Let me carry this for us." He never refused transparency in a way I could point to cleanly. He wrapped the refusal in hurt. And Adrian had an audience that loved that version of him. His mother, Marlene Cox, called him the protector of this family. She said it with pride, usually while sitting at the head of her dining table on Sunday evenings, her silver hair pinned perfectly, her blouse pressed, her voice sweet enough to sound harmless until you listened closely. "Adrian has always had a head for responsibility," she told me once, passing me a bowl of collard greens. "Some men are just built to hold things together." I smiled because I didn't want to start anything over dinner. Marlene believed deeply in appearances. Her husband had died years earlier, and after that she held the Cox family together with Sunday meals, framed photos, and the kind of guilt that could sound like wisdom if you were tired enough. She wasn't a monster. She loved her sons. She had survived loss and embarrassment and bills she didn't talk about. But she loved the idea of family reputation almost more than the people inside that family. Adrian's younger brother Devin was usually at those dinners too. Devin owned a small home renovation company. He was charming in a scattered way, always talking about the next contract, the next property, the next chance to turn things around. His wife Keisha was quieter. She watched more than she spoke, and I noticed she often checked Devin's face before answering questions. At the time, I thought she was shy. Later, I understood silence can be exhaustion. Devin's company had been struggling, though no one said it directly. You had to collect the truth in pieces. A supplier called during dinner, and Devin stepped outside too quickly. Marlene mentioned people not understanding delays. Adrian asked Devin whether he had handled the material issue. Keisha once rubbed her forehead when Devin joked that banks had no patience for small business owners. I did not know the numbers, but I knew pressure when I saw it. One Sunday, Adrian drove us home from his mother's house with one hand on the wheel and the other resting on my knee. "Devin just needs one clean opportunity," he said. I looked at him. What kind of opportunity? Something that gets him out of survival mode. With money. With structure, Adrian said. Money without structure doesn't fix anything. That sounded reasonable enough to pass as wisdom. A week later, he brought up the joint account again. Not to ask for anything, not directly, just to talk. "You know," he said while loading the dishwasher, "families that build wealth don't think small. They don't keep everything scattered because somebody's afraid." I dried a plate slowly. "Am I somebody?" He glanced at me, then smiled like I was being defensive. "I'm talking generally." But he wasn't. Adrian rarely said anything generally. By then I had started keeping a separate checking account for my paycheck again, mostly because I liked having money for my own expenses without running everything through his dashboard. When Adrian found out, he didn't yell. He just went quiet. That was worse. At dinner that night, he barely touched his food. When I asked what was wrong, he said, "I just didn't think my wife would feel the need to hide money from me." I'm not hiding money. My direct deposit changed. That's a very neat way to say it. I remember setting my fork down. "Adrian, you have business accounts I don't manage. I had those before us. So did my condo." His face changed then. Not dramatically. Just enough. "That condo became part of our plan because you said you believed in us," he said. There it was. Not anger. Obligation. The next Sunday at Marlene's house. I felt the temperature shift before anyone said anything. Marlene hugged me, but it was brief. Devin avoided my eyes. Keisha gave me a small smile that didn't reach the rest of her face. Halfway through dinner, Marlene started telling a story about a woman from church who had ruined her household because she insisted on controlling every penny. "She had a good husband," Marlene said, cutting into her chicken. "But some women would rather be right than married." Adrian said nothing. That silence told me he had told her something. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to say I had not accused him, had not stolen from him, had not done anything except keep one account in my own name. But I had grown up around people who turned defense into confession, and some old instincts still lived in me. So I stayed calm. "I think every marriage needs trust and clarity," I said. Marlene smiled. "Clarity is good," she said. "Suspicion is different." Across the table, Devin shifted in his chair. "Look, once the warehouse deal closes, everything changes anyway." The room went so still, I heard Keisha's fork touch her plate. Adrian turned his head slowly toward his brother. Devin's mouth closed. I looked from Devin to Adrian to Marlene, waiting for someone to explain what he had just said. No one did. Marlene reached for her water glass. Keisha looked down at her lap. Adrian picked up his napkin and placed it beside his plate with careful precision. "What warehouse deal?" I asked. Adrian smiled, but it was not the warm smile he used in public. "It's nothing you need to worry about tonight," he said. That was the first time I understood something had been moving behind my back. Not a mistake, not a misunderstanding. A plan. Fan 3. I waited until we were in the car before I asked again. The drive from Marlene's house to ours usually took 22 minutes if traffic was light. That night, it felt longer. Adrian kept both hands on the steering wheel, eyes forward, the dashboard lights cutting sharp lines across his face. "What warehouse deal?" I asked. He exhaled through his nose, not quite a sigh, not quite a laugh. "Devin talks too much when he's nervous. That doesn't answer me. It's just an idea, he said. Nothing formal. An idea with a closing. Adrian glanced at me then, only for a second. You heard one word at dinner and built an entire case around it. I heard your brother say once the warehouse deal closes, everything changes. That sounds like more than an idea. He turned onto the main road, calm as ever. Gianna, I love you, but sometimes your job follows you home. Not everything is a compliance issue. There it was again. That smooth little shift. He was not explaining the deal. He was explaining me. I looked out the window at the dark storefront sliding past. A nail salon, a dentist's office, a closed daycare with paper suns taped inside the windows. Normal places. Normal night. My marriage sitting beside me like a locked room. I'm asking because we have a joint account, I said. If something involves our money, I should know. And if it doesn't, then tell me it doesn't. He gave a soft laugh. It doesn't. It should have comforted me. It didn't. Over the next 2 weeks, the warehouse deal showed up everywhere except in conversation. It showed up in Adrian stepping outside to take calls he used to answer in front of me. It showed up in the way Devin texted him late at night, his name flashing across Adrian's phone and disappearing the moment Adrian turned it face down. It showed up in Marlene's new habit of asking me whether work was still keeping me too busy to focus on home. One Thursday evening, I came home later than usual after a staffing meeting ran long. Adrian's office door was cracked open. He was on the phone, his voice low. No, Russell. She doesn't need to be on that call, he said. The paperwork will be clean. I stopped in the hallway. There are moments in a marriage when you know listening is wrong, but walking away feels like agreeing to be blind. Adrian continued. We're not missing the window over one signature packet. I'll handle it. My skin went cold. I stepped back before the floorboard near his office could creak. I went into the kitchen, set my purse down louder than necessary, and opened the refrigerator like I had just come in. A minute later, Adrian appeared in the doorway, phone no longer in his hand. You're home, he said. I am. How was your meeting long? I took out a bottle of water. Who's Russell? His face did not change, but something behind his eyes tightened. Russell Gaines, he said. Commercial real estate guy Devin knows. For the warehouse, possibly. I thought it was just an idea. It is an idea. Ideas involve conversations. Do ideas involve signature packets? This time his smile disappeared. You were listening at my office door, I was walking down the hall. And you decided to stand there. The question was quiet, but the accusation inside it was not. I could already feel the conversation turning. In another minute we would not be talking about Russell Gaines, the warehouse, or a signature packet. We would be talking about my character. So I did something I had not done often enough in my marriage. I stopped defending the wrong thing. What paperwork were you talking about? I asked. Adrian rubbed a hand over his mouth. Gianna Devin is trying to put together a logistics space. Storage materials, small contractor distribution. It could help his business and eventually become a real asset. That's all. Where is it, Durham? How much does it cost? We don't know yet. That isn't true if there's a closing window. He stared at me for a moment. You know this is why I didn't bring it to you early. Not because I'm hiding anything. Because the second something isn't fully formed, you treat it like a threat. I wanted to say, a threat to whom? Instead I asked, is our joint account involved? No. The answer came fast. Too fast. I did not call him a liar. Not then. I had learned at work that when people are hiding something, direct accusation often teaches them what to conceal better. So I nodded, drank my water, and let the conversation end. But the next morning I started paying attention differently. At the hospital, I kept a small notebook in my desk for operational issues that didn't belong in official reports yet. I started a new page and wrote only dates and facts. No feelings. No theories. Sunday dinner, Devin says warehouse deal closes. Thursday, Adrian call with Russell Gaines mentions paperwork, clean signature packet. Thursday night, Adrian says joint account not involved. Facts look small when they are alone. Together they start building a shape. A week later, that shape got clearer. I was looking for printer paper in Adrian's office because ours had run out downstairs. We both used the house printer, so it was not unusual for me to go in there. On his desk, under a folder from a tax seminar, was a large white envelope with a return address from Gaines Commercial Realty. I stood still for a moment listening. Adrian was in the shower. The water was running upstairs. I was not proud of what I did next, but I also will not pretend I regret it. When your name, your money, and your future may be involved, politeness can become a trap. I opened the envelope. Inside was a glossy packet for a property in Durham, an old brick warehouse on the edge of an industrial stretch near train tracks and auto shops. The photos made it look better than it probably was. High ceilings, loading dock, office space, fenced parking lot. The kind of place a struggling contractor could look at and see rescue. Paper clipped to the back was a preliminary closing checklist. Buyer entity Cox Legacy Holdings, LLC. I read the name twice. Cox Legacy Holdings, not Devon's company, not Adrian's advisory business. Something new. Under required documents, several lines were checked in blue ink. Operating agreement, capital contribution authorization, member approval statement, proof of funds, personal financial profile. My mouth went dry at that last one. Personal financial profile could mean several things. Income, assets, creditworthiness, liabilities, the kind of information used to show a seller, lender, or investor that the buyer was solid. I knew enough from hospital vendor reviews to understand that documentation creates confidence even when the reality underneath is weaker. I took photos of every page exactly as I found them. Then I put the packet back in the envelope under the same folder at the same angle. That afternoon, I had a meeting in Durham with one of our outpatient clinic administrators. Afterward, instead of taking the highway straight home, I drove 20 minutes out of my way. I told myself I only wanted to see if the property existed. It did. The warehouse sat behind a chain-link fence, faded red brick with weeds growing along the loading dock. A banner on the fence read, "Available. Commercial redevelopment opportunity." There were 3 cars parked near the entrance. One was Devon's black pickup. One was Adrian's silver Lexus, and one was a navy sedan I did not recognize. I parked across the street beside a closed tire shop and watched through my windshield. I could see Adrian standing near the open warehouse door with Devon and another man, probably Russell Gaines. Russell had the smooth posture of someone used to selling risk as vision. He pointed toward the roofline, then the parking lot. Devon nodded too eagerly. Adrian stood with his arms folded, listening like a man already in charge. No one looked surprised to be there. No one looked like this was just an idea. I took one photo from my car, not close enough to read faces clearly, but clear enough to show the vehicles, the property, the date, the timestamp. Then I drove away before anger could make me careless. That evening, Adrian came home cheerful, not affectionate, cheerful. There is a difference. Affection reaches for you. Cheer performs around you. He kissed my cheek, asked about dinner, and told me he might have a busy couple of weeks coming up. Client stuff, I asked. Some client stuff, some family stuff. Devon, don't start Gianna. I asked one word, and I heard the tone behind it. I turned from the stove and looked at him. Why were you in Durham today? The kitchen seemed to shrink. Adrian blinked once. Excuse me, I had a clinic meeting there. I saw your car. A good liar denies too quickly. Adrian was better than that. He paused, adjusted his watch, and chose disappointment. You followed me? No. You just happened to be near the exact property Devon is looking at. I was in Durham for work, and instead of calling me, you sat somewhere watching. The way he said it made me sound unstable, sneaky, humiliating. For a second, the old reflex rose up again. Explain, apologize, prove I was reasonable. But I remembered my notebook. Facts, not feelings. You told me the joint account was not involved, I said. You told me it was just an idea. But there is a buyer entity, a closing checklist, and a real estate broker asking about paperwork. His face hardened. You went through my office. I did not answer. He stepped closer, not enough to frighten me physically, but enough to claim the room. This is exactly what my mother means, he said. You don't know how to be part of a family without building a case against it. Being part of a family does not require signing things I haven't read. Nobody asked you to sign anything. Then why did I hear you say you'd handle a signature packet? His jaw moved. For the first time, he had no immediate sentence ready. Then he said, because eventually, if this becomes real, we may need to move fast. That's how opportunities work. No, I said. That's how pressure works. He stared at me, and for one strange moment I saw the fear under his confidence. Not guilt exactly. Fear. Adrian needed this warehouse to work. For Devon, yes. For Marlene, yes. But also for himself. He had built his identity on being the man who understood money, the man who fixed things before anyone else saw the crack. If this failed, the image failed with it. That almost made me soften. Almost. The next Sunday, Marlene served pot roast and acted like nothing in the world was wrong. Devin talked too loudly about a school fundraiser for his daughter. Keisha barely ate. Adrian sat beside me with his hand resting on the back of my chair, the way husbands do when they want other people to see closeness. Near the end of dinner, Marlene lifted her iced tea and said, "I believe this family is entering a season of restoration." Devin looked at Adrian. Adrian looked at his plate. I said, "Restoration is a big word." Marlene smiled. "So is trust." I smiled back. "Yes, it is." Keisha's eyes flicked to mine and away again. That night after we got home, I could not sleep. Adrian was in the shower, and his tablet was on the nightstand charging. I was not trying to open it. I was not touching it. I was standing beside the bed folding a sweater when the screen lit up with a notification. From a document signing platform. Gianna signature package completed. For a few seconds, the room made no sound except the shower running behind the bathroom door. My name was on that screen. My name was on something I had never signed. I did not touch Adrian's tablet. That may sound strange considering my name had just appeared on it beside the words, "Signature package completed." But by then I had spent enough years managing hospital operations to know that panic can ruin evidence faster than guilt can hide it. If I grabbed his tablet and guessed the passcode, he would know. If I confronted him while the shower was still running, he would have time to explain, erase, redirect, or turn the whole thing into a conversation about my behavior. So I stood beside the bed, folded the same sweater 3 times, and memorized what I saw. Document signing platform. Gianna signature package completed. Time of notification. 10:18 p.m. When Adrian came out of the bathroom in sweatpants and a white t-shirt, I was putting clothes into the drawer. "You're quiet," he said. "I'm tired." He studied me, towel in one hand. "Long day always." He smiled a little, but his eyes moved to the tablet. The screen had gone dark again. He picked it up and turned it face down on the nightstand. That small movement told me enough to stay quiet. The next morning I got to the hospital early. My first meeting was at 8, but I arrived at 6:45 and sat in my office with the door closed. Outside the building was waking up nurses changing shifts, environmental services, rolling carts down polished floors, the smell of burnt coffee from the break room. I opened my email and typed the name of the signing platform into the search bar. Nothing showed up in my inbox. I searched signature. Nothing useful. I searched Cox legacy. Nothing. For a moment, I wondered if I had imagined it. That was the worst part of living with someone who could sound reasonable while hiding things. You start cross-examining your own eyes. Then I checked the archive folder. There it was. An email I had never seen, opened 2 days earlier and moved out of sight. Subject line: authorization for capital contribution. Completed copy. My hands went still above the keyboard. I did not open it right away. I took a screenshot of the mailbox view showing the folder sender subject line and date. Then I forwarded nothing, downloaded nothing, changed nothing. I called the one person I trusted who would not tell me to calm down before listening. Monique Harris answered on the 3rd ring. "Girl, it is 7 in the morning, she said, voice rough with sleep. "Somebody better be in labor, in jail, or lying. I think somebody signed my name on something." She went quiet. Monique and I had met years earlier at a compliance conference in Atlanta. She worked in data security for an insurance company, which meant she understood both systems and people who thought systems were too boring to expose them. What kind of something, she asked. "A capital contribution authorization for an LLC Adrian never told me I belonged to." Another pause. "Do not confront him yet." "I wasn't going to." "Good. Don't download anything from a device you don't control. Don't forward work emails if this is on personal. Don't alter file names. Preserve what you can. Screenshots with timestamps. Original emails. Access logs if you have them." Her voice was awake now. I opened the email while she stayed on the line. The document itself was attached as a completed copy. The first page had my legal name, Gianna Michelle Cox. Below it, Cox Legacy Holdings, LLC. The wording was dry enough to pretend nothing ugly was happening. Authorization for capital contribution. Member approval. Consent to use jointly held funds for initial acquisition deposit and operating reserve. I read the sentence 3 times. Jointly held funds. Not theoretical money. Not future money. Our money. My money. Near the bottom of the document was an electronic signature block with my name typed in a clean cursive font that looked nothing like my actual signature and somehow still made my stomach turn. Signed by Gianna Cox. Timestamp 2:14 p.m. on Tuesday. I almost laughed, but it came out as one hard breath. I was in a capacity planning meeting at 2:14 on Tuesday, I said. Can you prove it? Yes. Good. Pull the calendar invite. Pull any meeting notes. Anything showing you were actively present. I opened my work calendar. Tuesday, 1:30 to 3:00 p.m. Surgical Services Capacity Review. Attendees included 2 department directors, the chief nursing officer, 3 operations coordinators, and me. I had presented the staffing projections myself. There were Teams messages from me during that window. There was an email I sent at 2:17 with revised bed turnover numbers. There was even a meeting recording saved in the system because one director had joined late. At 2:14 p.m., someone had signed my name while I was on camera in a hospital conference room explaining why weekend discharge delays were affecting Monday admissions. Monique, I said, what do I do? You gather. Quietly. First, check your email security settings. Look for recent login activity, connected devices, forwarding rules, recovery emails, anything changed. If he got into your email, the document is just one piece. My fingers felt cold, but my mind was clear in a way that frightened me. I opened my account security page. I had not looked at it in months. That was my first mistake. The page loaded slowly, and then a list of recent activity appeared. My phone, my laptop, our home desktop, and one Windows device I did not recognize. Login, Monday night, 11:42 p.m., location Durham, North Carolina. I leaned closer to the screen. Durham was not proof by itself. People commuted, servers routed oddly, but the timing sat in my stomach like a stone. Monday night was the night before the document had been signed. Durham was where the warehouse was. Durham was where Devin kept a small rented office for his renovation company. Do you see something? Monique asked. A device I don't recognize. Durham. The night before. Screenshot it. Do not remove it yet. I want to remove it. I know. Screenshot first. Then write down exactly what you did and when, so I did. Screenshot. Time, date, notes. I found no forwarding rule, but there was a recovery phone number I recognized with the last 2 digits visible, Adrian's old business line. I had added it years ago when we were traveling and I got locked out of my email. At the time it felt practical. Husband and wife. Shared life. Backup access. Now it looked like a door I had forgotten was unlocked. At 8, I walked into my meeting with a printed agenda in my hand and a document with my forged name sitting in my personal email. I sat through staffing projections, budget concerns, and a discussion about overtime costs while my phone lay face down beside my notebook. Every time it buzzed, I thought it might be Adrian. It wasn't until lunchtime that I called the signing platform's support number. I used a small empty office near the administrative wing and put the call on speaker, recording nothing because I did not know the rules well enough and I refused to create a problem while trying to solve one. The support agent was polite in the guarded way people are when legal words might be nearby. I can confirm the completed document was sent to the email address on file, she said. I understand. I need to know whether you can provide access history. For privacy and security reasons, we can only provide limited information to account holders or through formal request. This document has my name on it. I did not sign it. There was a pause. I'm sorry to hear that, ma'am. What I can tell you is the document was opened and completed through the recipient link associated with your email address. At what time? She confirmed the same timestamp, 2:14 p.m. Tuesday. Can you see the device? I can't disclose technical logs on this call. You may submit a dispute request, and if an attorney or authorized investigator requests audit trail information, there is a process. Audit trail, I repeated. Yes, ma'am. That phrase mattered. It meant there was more than the pretty signature block. Somewhere behind that document existed a trail IP address, device details, timestamps, maybe authentication steps. Not truth as Adrian described it. Truth as the system recorded it. After I hung up, I called Monique back. They won't give me logs without a formal request. That's normal, she said, but now you know logs exist. What if he says I agreed verbally? Did you know? Then do not start debating hypothetical permission with him. This is about a signature and a document. Keep it there. I looked at the printed meeting agenda on the desk in front of me. Names, times, notes, everything ordinary, everything useful. By the time I got home that evening, I had copies of my calendar invite, screenshots of my email, archive my login activity, and a note summarizing the support call. I stored them in a password-protected folder Adrian did not know about, and backed them up to a secure cloud account I created from my work phone during lunch. Adrian was in the kitchen making salmon like nothing had changed. For a second, the domestic normalcy hurt more than the document. The smell of garlic and butter. The sound of the exhaust fan. His sleeves rolled up the way I used to love. The man who once drove across town in a storm because I had a migraine at work was standing 5 feet away from me, seasoning fish while my name sat on a financial document I had never signed. People want betrayal to look ugly from the beginning. It usually doesn't. Sometimes it wears the face of someone who knows how you take your coffee. "Hey," he said. "You okay? I had a long day. You've had a lot of those lately." I set my bag down. "Hospital doesn't run itself." He watched me carefully. "Anything you want to talk about, that was bait. I felt it. Not tonight." His expression softened in a way I might once have trusted. "Gianna, I don't want us turning into one of those couples who keep score." I opened the drawer for a fork. "Neither do I. Because last night you seemed distant." I was tired. "And this morning," I looked at him then. "What about this morning you left early? I had work." He turned the heat down under the pan. "I can't believe we're at a place where I have to wonder whether my wife is investigating me instead of talking to me." There it was. He had felt something shift. Maybe he saw my guarded face. Maybe he checked and noticed I had opened the archived email. Maybe guilt makes people alert. I closed the drawer slowly. "I can't believe we're at a place where asking questions feels dangerous," I said. His face changed. "Dangerous," he repeated. "Emotionally dangerous." He let out a humorless laugh. "That sounds like something Monique would say." I had not told him I spoke to Monique. The room went very quiet. Adrian realized his mistake almost as quickly as I did. He turned back to the stove, moving the salmon with a spatula. "She's your friend," he said. "You talk to her about everything." "Not everything. Enough." I stood there listening to the fan hum over the stove. He had shown me a corner of the truth without meaning to. He did not know exactly what I had, but he knew enough to worry. "I'm going to change before dinner," I said. He did not stop me. Upstairs, I locked the bedroom door and sat on the edge of the bed. My hands were shaking now because quiet takes strength, and strength has a cost. I opened my phone and checked the screenshots again one by one, making sure they were still there. The archived email, the timestamp, the unknown device, the Durham login, the recovery number, the calendar proving where I had been. A person can cry and still be strategic. I learned that night. I cried for 10 minutes. Then I washed my face, changed my shirt, and went downstairs to eat dinner with the man who had used my name like office equipment. Afterward, while Adrian took a call in the garage, my phone buzzed with a message from Monique. "Before you confront him again, freeze everything you can still control." I stared at that sentence for a long time. Then I opened my banking app. Fan 5. I did not move $1 that night. That was the first thing I had to teach myself. Protecting money is not always the same as touching it. The old version of me, the one my family trained and Adrian polished, wanted to act immediately, change everything, transfer everything, lock every door so loudly no one could pretend not to hear it. But I knew enough about systems and enough about people to understand that sudden movement could be used against me. If I emptied the joint account first, Adrian would call it theft. If I accused him without evidence, Marlene would call it instability. If I reacted emotionally, everyone who had already decided I was difficult would feel proven right. So I sat at the kitchen table after Adrian went to bed, opened my laptop, and made a list. Not a dramatic list, not a revenge list. A control list, passwords, email recovery, bank alerts, credit reports, legal consultation, document storage, payroll deposit, joint account access, signature dispute, timeline. Seeing the words lined up in plain black text steadied me. It reminded me that chaos only feels bigger when you don't name its parts. The next morning, I changed my email password from my phone before I even got out of bed. I removed Adrian's old business number as a recovery option, added a new authenticator app, signed out all unknown devices, and saved screenshots of each step. I did not do it secretly because I was doing something wrong. I did it carefully because someone else had already used access to my life as if it belonged to them. Adrian was in the bathroom shaving when my phone buzzed. A text from him, though he was only 12 feet away. "Did you change your email password?" I stared at it. That told me more than a confession would have. I typed back yes. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Why, I put the phone face down and got ready for work. When I came downstairs, Adrian was already in the kitchen wearing a navy suit and the expression he used when clients disappointed him. "Is there a reason you're locking me out of things?" he asked. I poured coffee into my travel mug. I updated my security. "Your security, my email security. We've always had backup access to each other's accounts." "No," I said. "You had backup access to mine." His jaw tightened. "That's not fair. It's accurate." He leaned against the counter. "Gianna, whatever you think is happening, this is not the way to handle it." I screwed the lid onto my mug. "What do I think is happening?" "You tell me." It was almost impressive the way he could invite accusation while preparing to punish it. I think my personal accounts should be secure," I said. He gave a short laugh. "You sound like a corporate memo. And you sound nervous." That landed. I saw it in his eyes. Then he softened. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Baby, I'm not nervous. I'm hurt. I don't want us to become two people hiding behind passwords and lawyers." I had not mentioned lawyers, not once. I let a second pass before I answered. "Then don't give me a reason to need either." I walked out before he could turn that sentence into a trial. At work, the hospital was already moving at full speed. A nurse manager needed approval for overtime coverage. A vendor invoice had been coded to the wrong department. One of our outpatient clinics had a water leak near the lab entrance. Normal problems, solvable problems, problems that became less frightening when people stopped pretending they did not exist. By 10:30, I closed my office door and called Elaine Whitaker at the bank. Elaine had managed our account relationship for 3 years. She was professional warm without being nosy and careful in the way bankers become when they understand that a friendly tone does not remove legal responsibility. "Mrs. Cox," she said, "what can I help you with today? I need to review security options on my joint account." There was a tiny pause. Not alarm, but attention. "Are you concerned about unauthorized activity?" "I'm concerned about possible future activity," I said. "I'm not making an accusation on this call. I want to know what protections are available for large transfers." "That's a good place to start," she said. I appreciated that she did not ask me why. Elaine explained that because the account was joint, either account holder generally had broad access. That meant Adrian could legally initiate certain transactions from the account just as I could. A joint account was not the same thing as 2 separate accounts requiring permission every time one person touched money. But wires were different enough to create process. For large wire transfers, the bank could place enhanced verification notes. It could flag unusual patterns. It could require callback confirmation to phone numbers already on file. It could not promise to stop every transaction, and it could not turn a joint account into a 2-signature trust overnight, but it could document my concern and require direct verbal confirmation before releasing unusually large wires. "What counts as unusually large?" I asked, given the account history. "Anything that removes a substantial portion of the balance would stand out," Elaine said. My fingers tightened around the pen. "Please add the verification note," I said. "For any large outgoing wire, I want a direct call to my cell phone. Not email, not my husband relaying confirmation. My cell. I can document that request. I also want to confirm the phone number." She read the last 4 digits. "Mine." "Good," I said. Elaine's voice softened a little. "Mrs. Cox, would you also like to open an individual account while we're reviewing access?" For the first time that morning, I almost cried. Not because the suggestion was emotional, but because it was practical. Practical kindness can break you when you have been living inside confusion. "Yes," I said. "I would." I went to the branch during lunch. The lobby smelled faintly of carpet cleaner and coffee. Elaine met me near her office door, a black woman in her 50s with reading glasses on a chain, and the calm face of someone who had seen people try to smile through private disasters before. She did not ask if Adrian was hurting me. She did not ask if I was leaving him. She did not ask questions that would force me to say more than I was ready to say. She simply said, "Let's make sure your paycheck has somewhere safe to land." We opened a checking account and a savings account in my name only. I did not transfer money from the joint account. I changed my direct deposit for future paychecks and arranged for my work bonus due the next month to go into the new savings account. Elaine printed the confirmation, then looked at me over the top of the paper. For your records, she said. Keep copies of everything. I am. I figured you were. There was no pity in her voice. I was grateful for that. After work, I drove to a small law office near downtown Raleigh with a brick exterior and a parking lot shaded by crepe myrtles. The attorney's name was Patricia Lane. Monique had found her through a colleague. Family property issues, civil financial disputes, fraudulent documents, clean and direct. Patricia was in her early 50s with silver-streaked locks pulled back and the kind of gaze that made exaggeration unnecessary. Her office had shelves of legal books, but the desk was clear except for a yellow pad, a pen, and a glass of water. Start with what you know, she said, not what you fear. So I did. I told her about the joint account, the condo money, the summaries Adrian sent, the warehouse, Cox Legacy Holdings LLC, the archived email, the electronic signature, the timestamp during my meeting, the Durham login, Adrian asking if I had changed my password, Marlene's pressure, Devon's financial trouble. Patricia listened without interrupting except to ask dates. When I finished, she drew 3 columns on her yellow pad. Money, identity, liability. The mistake people make, she said, is treating these as one problem. They overlap, but legally and practically they may require different responses. She tapped the first column. Money. If the account is joint, your husband may have authority to access funds. That does not mean he can misrepresent your consent for a separate business purpose, especially if some funds can be traced back to property you owned before marriage. We would need documents, but tracing matters. She tapped the second column. Identity. If someone used your email, your signature, or your personal information without authorization, that is a separate issue from marital disagreement. Then the third. Liability. This is the one I want you to take very seriously. If your name appears on LLC documents, guarantees, loan applications, or operating agreements, someone may try to make it look as if you accepted obligations. We need to see everything. I swallowed. I don't have everything. You have enough to stop acting blind. That sentence stayed with me. Patricia told me not to confront Adrian in writing beyond simple neutral statements. No long emotional texts. No accusations I could not yet support. No recorded conversations without understanding state law and context. No signing anything to keep peace. No verbal agreement that could later be twisted into consent. If he hands you paperwork, she said, you say, my attorney will review it. Then stop talking. I almost laughed. He'll hate that. I'm not asking what he'll enjoy. She also told me to freeze my credit. Today, she said. Not next week. Today. In simple terms, she explained that a credit freeze would make it harder for anyone to open new credit accounts in my name. It would not fix what had already happened, and it would not block every kind of financial misuse, but it was one more door closed. By the time I left her office, the sun was low and my phone had 9 missed calls from Adrian. 1 voicemail from Marlene. I sat in my car and played it on speaker. Gianna, Marlene, said her voice tight but still sweet around the edges. I don't know what's going on between you and my son, but I hope you understand that a wife who trusts her husband doesn't need a lawyer in her marriage. Be careful who you let in your home business. People outside the family don't have to live with the damage they cause. I played it twice, not because it hurt, because I needed to hear the wording. A wife who trusts her husband doesn't need a lawyer. People outside the family, damage they cause. She knew. Maybe not every detail, but enough. Adrian had told her I was asking questions, or Adrian had told her I had gone to a lawyer. Either way, Marlene was not confused. She was applying pressure. I saved the voicemail. When I got home, Adrian was in the living room with papers spread on the coffee table. He stood when I walked in. We need to talk, he said. I set my keys in the bowl by the door. I'm tired. This can't wait. On the table, I saw a folder labeled Household Planning Documents. Not Cox Legacy Holdings. Not warehouse, household planning. He was learning to rename things. What is that? I asked. Routine paperwork. For what? For us. I did not move closer. Adrian picked up the folder and held it out. Just read it. We're on the same team, Gianna. I thought about Patricia's yellow pad. Money, identity, liability. I'll have my attorney review it, I said. The sentence changed the room. Adrian's expression went flat. Your attorney? Yes. So this is where we are now. This is where I am. He dropped the folder onto the table. Papers shifted inside. You have no idea what you're doing, he said, voice low. You're going to make everything harder for everyone because you need to feel in control. No, I said. I need to understand what has my name on it. He stepped back like I had slapped him. Then almost worse, he laughed. Y'all want to talk about your name, fine. But when this opportunity falls apart, when Devon's company collapses, when my mother loses the last thing she has to be proud of, don't pretend you didn't choose suspicion over family. I looked at him for a long moment. There was a time when that sentence would have sent me rushing toward apology. I would have explained my heart. I would have promised I cared about Devon, about Marlene, about us. I would have tried to prove I was not selfish by giving away another piece of myself. That night I heard the sentence differently. He was telling me the cost of obedience. My silence would protect his image. My money would protect Devon's business. My signature would protect the deal. My guilt would protect everyone but me. I'm going upstairs, I said. Gianna. I stopped at the base of the stairs, but did not turn around. If you bring lawyers into this, he said, you can't undo it. I looked back then. If you put my name on documents I didn't sign, I said you already did. I slept in the guest room with the door locked. The next weeks were the strangest of my marriage. From the outside, nothing obvious changed. I went to work. Adrian met clients. We attended one church event and smiled in separate conversations. Marlene texted me Bible verses about unity. Devon sent a message saying he hoped Adrian and I could get back on the same page. Keisha sent nothing. Inside the house, Adrian grew more polite. That frightened me more than anger. He began asking careful questions about my schedule. What time was my Monday meeting? Would I be at the hospital all day? Was I still using the same phone number? Had the bank called about routine updates? I answered less than he asked. Meanwhile, I completed my control list. I froze my credit. I changed my payroll deposit. I saved statements from the joint account showing the balance and source deposits. I downloaded the closing checklist photos into secure storage. I wrote a timeline with dates, not adjectives. I sent Patricia copies of what I had. I called Elaine once more to confirm the wire verification note remained on the account. It's there, Elaine said. Any large outgoing wire will require direct confirmation. Directly with me, with you, she said. On your cell. For the first time in weeks, I slept 5 straight hours. Then Monday came. I remember that morning with impossible clarity. The sky was pale gray. I wore navy slacks and a cream blouse. I was supposed to lead a 7:30 meeting on staffing gaps in surgical recovery. I stopped at a coffee shop near the hospital because I had left early to avoid Adrian, who had been awake before me, pacing quietly downstairs. I pulled into the hospital parking lot at 7:38 a.m. At 7:41, Adrian called. I let it ring. At 7:42, Elaine Whitaker's name appeared on my screen. I answered before the second ring. Her voice was calm but not casual. Gianna. I need you to answer carefully, she said. Did you authorize Adrian to empty the account this morning? For 1 second, I heard nothing. Not the cars moving through the hospital parking lot. Not the low hum of the air conditioning. Not the coffee lid popping softly as heat escaped through the opening. Only Elaine Whitaker's question sitting in the space between my ear and the phone. Did you authorize Adrian to empty the account this morning? My first instinct was to call him. That is what people expect you to do when your marriage is on fire. Call, demand, cry, ask why. Give the person who hurt you the first chance to explain what your own eyes are already seeing. But Patricia's voice came back to me. Do not let panic create consent. So I put the coffee in the cup holder, rested both feet flat on the floorboard, and made myself breathe before I answered. No, I said. I did not authorize that. Elaine did not sound surprised. That scared me more than if she had gasped. Thank you, she said. I need to ask a few verification questions, and then I'm going to explain what we're seeing. Is the money gone? The wire has not been released. My eyes closed. Not in relief. Not fully. More like my body needed half a second to understand the difference between almost destroyed and not destroyed yet. The wire has not been released, I repeated, making sure I had heard her right. That's correct. It is currently on hold pending verification. How much the request is for $209,684.73. I looked through the windshield at the hospital entrance. People were walking in wearing scrubs badges, cardigans, backpacks. A security guard held the door for an older woman with a walker. The world kept operating completely unaware that almost every dollar I had spent years building had just been aimed out of my life. Where was it going, I asked. Elaine paused, just long enough to tell me the answer mattered. The receiving account is under the name Cox Legacy Holdings, LLC. I had known that name was coming. I had seen it on the packet. I had seen it in the email. But hearing it from the bank made it real in a different way. Was the request submitted by Adrian? I asked. The wire was initiated through your joint account access and supported by documents submitted under his profile. Because of the enhanced verification note you placed on the account, and because the amount would remove almost the entire balance, the transfer was flagged for direct confirmation. My phone vibrated against my cheek. Adrian. I ignored it. Elaine continued. There are also inconsistencies in the supporting authorization. What kind of inconsistencies? I can't make a final fraud determination on this call, she said carefully, but I can tell you the transfer package includes an electronic authorization bearing your name. There is no authorization from me. I understand. No, I said, and my voice sharpened before I could soften it. I need you to document exactly what I am saying. I did not authorize this transfer. I did not approve this wire. I did not give Adrian permission to use my electronic signature. I'm documenting that now. My phone buzzed again. Adrian. Then a text dropped down at the top of my screen. Call me before you make this worse. I stared at those words while Elaine typed on the other end. Before you make this worse. Not before you misunderstand. Not I can explain. Not please don't be scared. Worse. As if the damage began when I noticed it. Mrs. Cox, Elaine said, Are you somewhere private? I'm in my car at work. Can you move somewhere more private before we continue? There is another document attached to the transfer request. My hand tightened around the phone. What document? I would rather not summarize it while you're in a public place. That sentence moved me. I grabbed my bag, locked the car, and walked toward the hospital with the phone still against my ear. I did not remember crossing the parking lot. I only remember holding my badge up to the scanner and thinking, not here, not in the lobby, not where someone can ask if you're okay. I went straight to a small administrative conference room near my office. It was used for vendor calls and performance reviews, which meant nobody wanted to be in it unless they had to. I shut the door, lowered the blinds, and sat at the end of the table. I'm private now, I said. Elaine's voice became even more precise. The package includes an operating agreement for Cox Legacy Holdings, LLC. I took out my notebook. Go on. You are listed as a managing member. The pen stopped moving. I knew the phrase from the closing checklist, but I had not seen a full operating agreement. A managing member was not just a decorative title. In an LLC, it could make it appear that you had authority to act for the business, approve transactions, participate in management, or at least knowingly accept a formal role. I have never agreed to be part of that LLC, I said. I understand. I have never attended a meeting for it. I have never signed an operating agreement. I have never approved a capital contribution. I'm noting your statement. My phone vibrated again, this time with a text. Don't turn a family matter into a public scandal. For a moment, something inside me went cold and quiet. There it was. The whole architecture of the thing. Family matter meant he expected privacy. Public scandal meant he feared documentation. Don't meant he still thought he could direct me. I did not answer him. Instead, I asked Elaine, can you send copies of the submitted documents to me? We can provide documents connected to your account and the wire review through secure delivery. Because there is a potential dispute, I may also need to involve our fraud department directly. Please do. And Mrs. Cox, if you have legal counsel, you may want them included. I do. Saying that out loud changed something in me. Not because having a lawyer made me powerful in some dramatic way, but because it meant I was no longer trying to survive Adrian's version of events alone. I called Patricia from the conference room on my work phone, while Elaine stayed available by email. Patricia answered on the second ring. Tell me what happened, she said. I did. No extra details, no crying, no story, just the facts as Elaine had given them. Wire request. $209. 684.73. Cox Legacy Holdings, LLC. Electronic authorization with my name. Operating agreement. Managing member. Transfer on hold. Patricia was silent for a few seconds. Then she said, Do not call Adrian. I haven't. Do not text him anything emotional. I haven't. Do not say maybe I guess we talked about it or anything that sounds like implied approval. I won't. I want you to email me the banker's contact information. Ask the bank to preserve all records related to the transfer request, including timestamp submission method account, access records, attached documents, device information if available, and all communications about the wire. I wrote as fast as she spoke. Patricia. I said, what does managing member mean for me? It means someone is trying to make you look like more than a passive spouse. If your name is on the operating agreement, they may be trying to show you were involved in the company. Involved how in management approval funding, possibly representations to other parties. It depends on the language. I need to read it. My stomach turned. There's more, isn't there? There may be, she said. LLC documents often travel with other documents when someone is seeking financing, closing a purchase, or proving funds. We need to know whether your name appears anywhere else. I looked at the blank wall of the conference room. A framed print hung slightly crooked near the door, a watercolor of oak trees in spring. I remember that because fear makes some details absurdly clear. Elaine emailed the secure packet within 20 minutes. I forwarded the access link to Patricia after confirming it was permitted. Then I sat there while my 7:30 meeting started without me. My assistant messaged, "Are you joining?" I typed back, "Emergency. Please have Daniel lead. I'll review notes later." The hospital could function without me for an hour. My life could not. Patricia called back at 8:31. Her voice was different. Not alarmed. Focused. "I'm looking at the operating agreement," she said. "Your name appears as managing member. There is an electronic signature block for you. There is also a capital contribution authorization referencing jointly held funds. I didn't sign any of it." "I know. Keep saying that clearly. Is that enough to stop the wire? The bank already stopped it pending review. Your direct denial helps. The prior verification note helps. Your timeline helps. But Gianna, listened to me carefully. This is not just about stopping the wire." I pressed my palm against the table. "What else?" "There is a reference here to a purchase file and lender review. I need to see the rest of the documents." "What does that mean?" "It means your name may have been used to support the business transaction beyond this transfer." The room felt smaller. My personal money was one thing. A business entity was another. But a lender review meant someone outside the family had been shown a picture of me that was not true. Stable job, strong income, clean credit, joint funds, managing member, cooperative wife. A woman turned into paperwork. Adrian called again. This time I declined it. Immediately another text appeared. "You're humiliating me over something you don't understand." I almost responded. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to write, "I understand perfectly." I wanted to write, "You forged me." I wanted to write, "How dare you?" Instead, I placed the phone face down. Patricia had told me not to give him language to fight, so I gave him nothing. At 8:47, Elaine called back with a member of the bank's fraud department on the line. His name was Mr. Coleman. His tone was formal but not unkind. "Mrs. Cox," he said, "we're going to continue holding the wire while we review your dispute. I need to confirm you are stating you did not authorize the wire transfer, did not electronically sign the related authorization, and do not consent to release the funds to Cox Legacy Holdings, LLC. Is that correct?" "Yes," I said. "That is correct." "And you are requesting preservation of all records related to the submission?" "Yes, we will document that." Elaine added, "The funds remain in the account at this time." At this time. The phrase reminded me not to relax too early. After the call ended, I sat alone in the conference room and finally let myself feel the full weight of it. Adrian had not lost control for a moment and made a reckless transfer. He had built a path. He had used documents, timing, family pressure, business language, and my own trust as materials. He had turned my hesitation to accuse him into room to move. My phone buzzed again. This time it was not Adrian. It was an email notification from Patricia. Subject, "Do not sign anything. Come to my office today." Under it was a second message forwarded from Elaine through secure delivery. "Additional document located in transfer support package." I opened it. At the top in plain black letters were the words "Personal Guarantee." My name was on the first page. I called Patricia back with my hand shaking. She answered before I spoke. "I just saw it," she said. "What is this?" Her voice stayed steady, but each word landed hard. "Gianna." This signature isn't the only problem. There's a personal guarantee attached. I had heard the phrase personal guarantee before. Not in my marriage. Not in any conversation Adrian had ever chosen to have with me. But at the hospital, vendors sometimes submitted financing documents when they wanted long-term contracts or equipment leases approved. A personal guarantee meant someone was not just signing as a company. They were putting their own name behind the debt, their credit, their assets, their future income, their skin in the game. I sat in Patricia Lane's office that afternoon with the document printed in front of me, watching my name appear in places where my permission had never been. Gianna Cox, managing member, guarantor, signature. The words looked clean on paper. That was the disturbing part. Fraud did not always look like a ransom note. Sometimes it looked like a well-formatted PDF with professional margins. Patricia sat across from me, silver-streaked locks, pulled back glasses low on her nose. She did not rush me. She gave me a minute to read enough to understand why she had asked me to come in immediately. Then she turned the document toward herself and tapped the second page. "This is the danger," she said. I looked at the paragraph under her finger. If Cox Legacy Holdings, LLC failed to meet its obligations, Patricia explained the party holding this guarantee could attempt to pursue the guarantors personally. That may include personal assets, income, and credit depending on the final terms and enforceability. My assets, I said. Potentially. My credit. Potentially. My salary. Potentially if a judgment were entered down the road. There are steps between here and there, but yes, this is the kind of document designed to reach beyond the LLC. I sat back slowly. The $209,684.73 had felt like the whole disaster that morning. Almost every dollar in our joint account aimed at a company I had never joined. But now I understood Adrian had been reaching for more than money. He was reaching for the life I had built before him and the credibility I maintained every day. My job history, my income, my clean credit, my condo proceeds, my discipline. He did not just want my savings. He wanted my profile. Patricia must have seen that realization settle on my face. "Gianna," she said, "listen carefully. A personal guarantee with an unauthorized signature can be disputed. The bank holding your account has already paused the wire. That is good. But you need to assume other parties may have seen these documents, Russell Gaines. Possibly the seller, a lender, a broker, anyone involved in the purchase file." I thought of Adrian standing outside that Durham warehouse, arms folded, looking like a man who had already decided the future. I thought of Devin nodding too eagerly. I thought of Marlene talking about restoration at Sunday dinner like she was blessing something sacred. Why would he make me managing member, I asked. "To make the file stronger," Patricia said. "You have stable employment, traceable savings, and a professional background. If Devin's company is struggling and Adrian's business income fluctuates, you may be the cleanest part of the picture. The cleanest part. Not the wife, not the partner. The cleanest part of a business file." I pressed my fingers against my eyes for a moment. I did not cry. I had cried enough the night before. Now I felt something colder than grief. Precision. "What do we do?" I asked. Patricia pulled a yellow pad closer. "First, we notify the relevant parties that you dispute your signatures and do not authorize use of your name, credit funds, or role in Cox Legacy Holdings, LLC. Second, we preserve records. Third, you avoid private conversations where Adrian can pressure you or later mischaracterize what you said. Fourth, you do not return home tonight if you feel you may be cornered." I looked up. "He hasn't hit me." "I didn't ask that," she said gently. The room went quiet. I understood what she meant. Harm did not always announce itself with a bruise. Sometimes it waited in a living room with paperwork and a husband who knew exactly which guilt to pull. "I can stay with Monique," I said. "Good." Before I left, Patricia gave me one sentence to use if Adrian tried to drag me into an argument. "My attorney is reviewing all documents, and I do not consent to use of my name, funds, signature, or credit." "Repeat it," she said. I did. Again. Again. By the third time, it sounded less like a legal line and more like a door closing. When I got home, Adrian was waiting. His car was in the driveway, though he should have been with clients. The living room curtains were open. His briefcase sat near the couch. The folder from the night before was gone from the coffee table. He stood when I came in. "Where have you been at work?" "Don't do that." I set my purse on the entry table. Do what? Talk to me like I'm stupid. I went to my attorney. His face tightened. My attorney, he repeated like the words tasted bitter. You mean Patricia Lane? So he knew her name. I had not told him. That was another fact for the timeline. I'm not discussing this privately, I said. Adrian gave a hard laugh. Privately? I'm your husband, Gianna. Since when is talking to your husband some kind of legal risk? Since my name appeared on documents I didn't sign. He stepped toward me. Not fast. Not violently. But with the confidence of someone used to taking up space until the other person backed down. You keep saying that like you have proof. I have enough. No, you have confusion. You have Monique in your ear. You have some attorney turning a family investment into fraud because that's how she gets paid. My attorney is reviewing all documents, I said, hearing Patricia's voice in mine, and I do not consent to use of my name, funds, signature, or credit. Adrian stared at me. For a second he looked genuinely wounded. That was what made him dangerous to my heart. Some part of him probably was hurt. Not because he had hurt me, but because I had stopped making it easy for him to explain himself as noble. You think I was trying to steal from you? He asked quietly. I think you tried to transfer 209 or 684.73 without telling me. For a family asset. For Cox Legacy Holdings, LLC. Our family. I am not a member of that company. Your name is on the documents because you are my wife. I felt the sentence hit the air between us. Not because it made sense. Because he believed some version of it. As if marriage gave him a quiet power of attorney over my life. No, I said. My name is on those documents because somebody put it there. He looked away. It was brief. Barely a flicker. But I saw it. Then his anger came back to cover. You would have said no, he said. There it was. Not an apology. Not a denial. A confession wrapped in accusation. You didn't ask me because you knew I would say no. I didn't ask you because every time my family needs something you make it about boundaries. Because your family keeps asking for things that cost me. That is marriage. That is family. That is what people do for each other. No, I said. People ask. They don't forge. His mouth pressed into a line. Be careful with that word. Then be careful with my signature. The silence after that was so sharp I could feel my pulse in my throat. Adrian turned and walked toward the window. For a moment with his back to me, he looked smaller than he ever had. Tired. Cornered. Human. I could almost see the man beneath the performance, the older son who had been told he had to save everyone, the advisor who could not admit his own family's finances were falling apart, the husband who confused leadership with control because control had always gotten him praised. When he spoke again, his voice was lower. Devin is drowning. I said nothing. He has a lawsuit coming. A client says he abandoned a renovation which isn't fair because the supplier delays weren't his fault. He owes vendors. He's behind on payroll. If this warehouse closes, he can consolidate storage lease part of the space show stability renegotiate. It buys him time. And you used me to buy it. He turned around. I used what we had. You used what I built. His face changed again. Anger, shame, fear, all moving too quickly to separate. You think I wanted this? He asked. You think I wanted to be the one everyone calls when they're falling apart? My mother looks at me like I'm the last solid thing in this family. Devin calls me at midnight because he can't breathe. Keisha is one bad month from taking the kids to her sister's. And you... He stopped. And what I asked. His eyes met mine. You can survive anything, he said. You always do. I hated him for knowing that about me. I hated him more for using it. That doesn't make me available for anything I said. He rubbed both hands over his face. I was going to tell you after closing. I almost laughed. After my money was gone, after the deal was stable. After saying no would no longer matter. He did not answer. My phone buzzed. Monique. You okay? I typed back with one hand, leaving soon. Adrian saw the movement. You're not leaving, he said. I looked at him. He seemed to hear himself at the same time I did. I mean, he said quickly, don't walk out in the middle of this. We need to fix it tonight. No, Adrian. You need me to fix it tonight. He stepped closer again, and this time I stepped back. That stopped him. The smallest movement can reveal the whole truth of a room. I'm staying with Monique, I said. His face hardened. So now we're separated. Tonight we are not under the same roof. He laughed once bitterly. My mother was right. About what? You don't know how to stand with family when it gets ugly. I picked up my purse. I stood with family for years, I said. That's how you knew where to place the knife. I left before the sentence could turn me around. Monique lived 20 minutes away in a third-floor apartment with too many plants and a couch she always claimed was uncomfortable, even though it had carried half our friend group through breakups, grief, and layoffs. She opened the door before I knocked twice. You brought clothes, she asked. One bag? Good. You're not going back tonight. That was all she said. No dramatic hug. No questions in the hallway. She locked the door behind me and made tea while I sat at her kitchen table staring at my phone as Adrian called 6 times. I did not answer. At 9:14 p.m., Marlene called. I let it go to voicemail. Then Devin. Then Adrian again. At 9:37, a text came from Keisha. Can we talk tomorrow alone? I stared at it. Keisha had never texted me privately unless it was about what dish to bring to dinner or what size sweater Marlene wore. I showed Monique. She read it and looked at me carefully. Do you trust her? I don't know. Then don't meet alone in private. So I texted back. We can meet somewhere public. Keisha responded almost immediately. Library on Fayetteville Street, 10 a.m. Please don't tell them. Them. Not Adrian. Not Devin. Them. The next morning, I arrived at the library 10 minutes early and sat near a window overlooking the street. I had barely slept. My eyes felt gritty and my body ached with the strange exhaustion that comes from staying calm too long. Keisha walked in wearing jeans, a tan cardigan, and sunglasses she did not take off until she sat across from me. She looked older than 33 that morning. I don't have much time, she said. Okay. She looked down at her hands. I should have said something earlier. I did not comfort her. I did not say it was okay. It wasn't. Keisha swallowed. Devin told me Adrian was handling the paperwork. At first I thought that meant with you. Then I saw messages. What messages between Devin and Marlene? My body went still. Keisha took out her phone, opened her photos, and turned the screen toward me. It was a screenshot of a text conversation. Devin's name at the top. Marlene's message beneath it. Use Gianna's profile. She won't fight family once it's done. For a moment, the entire library seemed to fade around the edges. Children's voices from the next section, the soft beep of a scanner at the front desk, someone typing on a public computer, life moving around a sentence that had just explained the last 6 months of mine. I read it again. Use Gianna's profile. Not ask Gianna. Not include Gianna. Use her. Keisha's voice broke. I'm sorry. I looked up from the phone. Send it me, I said. She nodded, tears forming now. There's more. Keisha looked at the library entrance before she said it. There's more. Those 2 words did something to my body. Not shock exactly. Shock had already spent itself. This was the heavier feeling that came when a pattern stopped being suspicion and became architecture. I kept my voice low. What else? Keisha wiped under one eye with the side of her finger, careful not to smear her mascara. I didn't know at first. I swear I didn't. Devin told me Adrian was helping him with a business opportunity, and I thought maybe Adrian was just doing what Adrian does, making things look organized. Keisha. She nodded quickly, like she knew I did not have patience for soft beginnings. Devin let Adrian use his office computer a few times, she said. The one at the storage unit. Adrian said his laptop was acting up and he needed to access some business files. The office in Durham, yes. The unknown Windows login. Durham. Monday night. I did not interrupt her. I only reached into my purse, took out my notebook, and wrote the date at the top of a clean page. Keisha watched me do it. You're writing this down? Yes. Her face crumpled a little. Good. That one word told me how long she had wanted someone else to hold the facts with her. She took a breath and continued. A few weeks ago, I came by the office after picking up our youngest from preschool. Devin wasn't there, but Adrian was. He looked startled when I walked in. He had the computer open and I saw your email on the screen. My email, I couldn't see everything. Just your name in the corner. He closed it fast and said you had asked him to find something for tax records. I felt my jaw tighten. I never asked him that. I know that now. But you didn't then. She looked down. I suspected. I didn't know. There was shame in her voice, but there was also fear. I knew enough not to confuse the two. Keisha had been living inside the Cox family longer than I had. She knew the cost of challenging Marlene. She knew the cost of disappointing Adrian. She knew the cost of Devon's panic. I asked, "Why are you telling me now?" Keisha pressed her lips together. "Because yesterday Devon told me if the deal doesn't close, we could lose everything. Then he said it like it was your fault, like you were taking food from our kids. And I realized they were doing to you what they've been doing to me, making one woman carry the consequences of every man's bad decision." The sentence landed softly, but it stayed. She scrolled again and sent me the screenshot of Marlene's message. Then she sent another. This one was from Devon to Adrian. "Mom says Gianna won't risk the marriage over paperwork. Just get it done before closing." I stared at the words. Before closing. Get it done. Paperwork. Adrian had not been dragged into this by one desperate brother. He had not been pressured by Marlene in a vague emotional way and stumbled into a mistake. They had discussed my resistance before they created a document that said I consented. Keisha sent a third image. This one was not a text. It was a photo of Devon's office desk, a computer monitor, half-open browser tabs, and a folder on the desktop named G. Cox Docs. The image was blurry, taken quickly, probably from the doorway, but my name was clear enough. "When did you take this?" I asked. 2 weeks ago. "Why?" "Because I was scared." "Of what?" She looked out the window at Fayetteville Street. A bus rolled past, blocking the morning sun for a second. "Of being blamed later," she said. I understood that answer completely. Blame had a way of searching for the nearest woman. I forwarded everything to Patricia while Keisha sat across from me. I did not add commentary. I wrote only from Gianna Cox. Screenshots and photo related to Cox Legacy Holdings documents and unauthorized use of my profile. Patricia replied in less than 3 minutes. "Bring these to my office. Do not meet anyone privately. I am sending preservation letters today." I showed Keisha the message. Her face tightened. "Will Devon know I gave these to you eventually, maybe?" She closed her eyes. "I'm not trying to destroy him," I said. "I know, but I'm not protecting him by letting them use me." Keisha opened her eyes again. "I know that too. It was the first honest thing anyone connected to the Cox family had said to me in days without asking for something in return." When I left the library, Adrian had called 4 times. Marlene had left another voicemail. Devon had sent one text. "Can we all please breathe before people ruin lives?" I stood on the sidewalk reading it while traffic moved around me. People. That word did a lot of work in his sentence. It blurred who had done what. It made consequences sound like aggression. It turned evidence into danger. I typed nothing back. At Monique's apartment, we spread every piece of evidence across her dining table without printing anything we did not need to. Monique was methodical. She made folders by category: bank, email, signature platform, LLC, warehouse, Cox family texts, timeline, attorney. She made tea I forgot to drink and sat beside me with her laptop open. "You need a clean chronology," she said. "Not a pile of proof. A story the documents can support. A story. You know what I mean. Sequence. Cause. Who knew what and when." That was familiar language. In hospital operations, a messy incident became manageable when the timeline was clear. Medication delays, staffing gaps, supply chain failures, patient complaints. Everyone had feelings. The timeline told you where the system actually broke. So we built mine. 6 months earlier, Adrian pushes financial dashboard, discourages direct account access. Sunday dinner, Devon mentions warehouse closing. Thursday call, Adrian mentions Russell clean paperwork signature packet. Warehouse visit, Adrian Devon Russell at Durham property. Tablet notification, Gianna signature package completed. Archived email, capital contribution authorization. Signature timestamp, Tuesday, 2:14 p.m. during my hospital meeting. Unknown login, Durham, Monday night. Recovery phone, Adrian's old business line. Bank security enhanced verification requested. Wire attempt, 209, 684.73 to Cox Legacy Holdings, LLC. Operating agreement, Gianna listed as managing member. Personal guarantee, Gianna listed as guarantor. Keisha evidence, Marlene text, Devon text, photo of G. Cox Docs folder. When we finished, Monique leaned back and looked at the screen. "Gianna," she said quietly, "this is not confusion." "I know. No, I need you to hear me. This is not a marital misunderstanding. This is not you being sensitive. This is a documented plan. I looked at the timeline until the words blurred. Some part of me had still been waiting for an explanation that would make the marriage recognizable again. A reason that hurt, but did not erase the whole picture. Adrian panicked. Adrian misunderstood. Adrian thought I agreed. Adrian meant to tell me. The timeline did not allow those comforts. By 2 o'clock, I was in Patricia Lane's office again. She read the messages from Keisha twice. Then she placed the printed copies beside the bank packet and the LLC documents. This helps, she said. How much? Enough that I'm going to widen the preservation request. To who? Adrian, Devon, Marlene, Russell, Gaines, Cox, Legacy Holdings, LLC, and any closing or lending parties we can identify. I watched her mark names on her pad. What does a preservation letter actually do? It puts them on notice not to delete, destroy, alter, or hide relevant evidence. Emails, texts, device logs, drafts, transaction records, closing documents. It does not magically stop bad behavior, but it makes later deletion harder to explain. That made sense. It was not a weapon. It was a light turned on in a room where people had been moving furniture in the dark. Patricia also contacted Elaine to coordinate with the bank's fraud review. Elaine confirmed the wire remained on hold and that the bank had preserved the transfer package as submitted. Then Patricia opened another email. This came from the secure documents Elaine sent, she said. I want you to see the language. The email chain was between Adrian and Russell Gaines. Russell had written, all member approvals need to be cleaned before closing. Seller will not tolerate funding uncertainty this late. Adrian had replied, we will have the approvals and proof of funds ready. My wife is on board. My wife is on board. 3 simple words. A whole lie wearing a wedding ring. I felt heat rise in my chest, but I kept still. Did Russell know I wasn't? I asked. We don't know yet, Patricia said. This email shows what Adrian represented. It does not prove Russell knew it was false. That distinction matters. I appreciated that about Patricia. She did not make the facts more dramatic than they were. She did not need to. She then showed me the LLC filing. The contact email was Adrian's business address. The mailing address was our house. My name appeared as managing member, but no email of mine appeared anywhere. Why put my name but not my contact? I asked. Patricia looked at me over her glasses. Because they needed your profile, not your participation. I had to look away. There are sentences that do not sound cruel until you realize they are exact. My phone buzzed again. Adrian. This time he left a voicemail. I played it in Patricia's office with her permission. His voice was gentle. Gianna, please. We need to talk like husband and wife, not through strangers. I know you're scared, and I know this looks bad because you don't have all the context. I should have explained more. I can admit that. But I was under pressure, and I was trying to protect us from losing an opportunity that could change everything. Don't let outsiders convince you I'm your enemy. Come home tonight. We'll sit down. No lawyers. Just us. For a second, the old Adrian came through. The man who rubbed my shoulders when I came home exhausted. The man who remembered the anniversary of my father's death and left flowers on the kitchen counter without making a show of it. The man who could make almost any room feel calmer by lowering his voice. That was why the betrayal hurt so much. He was not always lying. He was not always cruel. He had loved me in ways that were real enough to make the false parts harder to see. But love that turns into access without consent becomes danger. Patricia waited until the voicemail ended. What do you want to do? She asked. I don't want to see him alone. Good. I also don't want to hide. Also good. Outside her office window. The afternoon light had turned the brick building across the street a deep orange. I remember thinking how ordinary the day looked for something so ugly. Patricia folded her hands. He is asking for a meeting. We can give him one, but not on his terms. What terms? A controlled setting. Bank conference room if Elaine agrees because the wire and account are central. I attend. Elaine attends. Fraud representative if available. No private side conversations. No signing. No verbal commitments. If family members insist on being involved, we decide whether their presence helps or hurts. Marlene will come, I said. I assumed she would. Devon too. Probably. Patricia paused. Would she speak? I don't know. Then we invite her only if she chooses to come. Do not pressure her. Her evidence is useful, but she is also in that family system. Family system. That phrase fit better than family. A system has roles, pressure points, rewards, punishments. People who benefit from silence and people assigned to maintain it. I had been assigned to pay. At 4:18 p.m., Patricia sent Adrian a formal email. I watched her type it. Mr. Cox. Mrs. Cox will not meet privately regarding Cox Legacy Holdings, LLC. The attempted wire transfer for the operating agreement, the alleged capital contribution authorization, or any related guarantee. If you wish to discuss resolution, a meeting may be scheduled with counsel and appropriate bank representatives present. There it was. No insults, no accusations in all caps, no emotional begging, no explanation of my pain, just a boundary with a location. Adrian replied 26 minutes later. This is unnecessary. My wife and I can resolve this without turning it into a legal circus. Patricia read it and smiled without warmth. He's still trying to name the room, she said. What does that mean? If he calls it marriage, you're the disloyal wife. If he calls it family, you're the selfish outsider. If he calls it a legal circus, you're the dramatic one. We are going to call it what the documents call it. A disputed wire transfer, disputed LLC filing, disputed authorization, and disputed personal guarantee. For the first time in days, I felt something close to steadiness. Not happiness. Not victory. Steadiness. That evening, I went back to Monique's apartment. I packed more clothes with her beside me because Patricia said I could return home briefly if I had support and avoided argument. Adrian was not there when we arrived. The house smelled like his cologne, faint but present, and the kitchen counter was spotless in a way that made it feel staged. On the dining table was an envelope with my name written across it. Gianna. I did not open it with my hands shaking this time. I photographed it first, front, back, placement on table. Then I opened it. Inside was a handwritten note from Adrian. I know you feel betrayed. I know I should have communicated better. But if you stop this closing, you won't just hurt me. You'll hurt Devin, Keisha, the kids, and my mother. Everything I did was to keep this family from falling apart. Please don't make a permanent decision from temporary fear. Under the note was a printed document. Ratification of prior consent. I knew the word from Patricia. Ratification meant approving something after the fact. In plain English, it meant Adrian wanted me to sign a paper saying that what had already been done without me was now acceptable. My stomach turned not from surprise, but from the audacity of it. Monique looked over my shoulder. He left you a trap with stationery, she said. I took photos and put everything in a folder without signing, marking, or writing on it. Then I saw one line near the bottom of the ratification document. Closing scheduled, Thursday 11:00 a.m. That was less than 48 hours away. Adrian was not stopping. He was trying to make me legalize the lie before the clock ran out. I sent the photos to Patricia. Her reply came almost immediately. If he wants a meeting, give him one. But this time we choose the room. The room Patricia chose was not dramatic. That was the point. It was a conference room at the bank's second floor, frosted glass walls, a long walnut table, a pitcher of water in the center, and a clock that ticked just loudly enough to make silence uncomfortable. There were no family photos, no Sunday dinner smells, no couch where Adrian could sit beside me and lower his voice until I forgot the paperwork. Just chairs, documents, witnesses. Elaine Whitaker was already there when Patricia and I arrived. She wore a dark green blazer and had a folder arranged neatly in front of her. Beside her sat Mr. Coleman from the fraud department, a serious man with close-cropped gray hair and a legal pad he had not written on yet. Patricia placed her briefcase on the floor and leaned toward me before anyone else came in. Remember, she said quietly, you do not need to convince them you are a good person. You only need to be clear. I nodded. My mouth was dry, but my hands were steady. Adrian arrived 8 minutes late. Marlene came with him. So did Devin. I should have expected that, but my body still reacted when I saw all three of them walk through the door. Adrian in a charcoal suit, no tie, face composed. Marlene in a cream pantsuit, pearls at her throat, looking as if she were attending a board luncheon instead of a meeting about my name being used without permission. Devin came last, shoulders tight, eyes red, jaw unshaven. Keisha entered a minute later by herself. She did not sit next to Devin. That told me something before she said a word. Adrian noticed too. His eyes moved from Keisha to me, and for the first time that morning his confidence cracked around the edges. Elaine stood. Thank you all for coming. To be clear, this meeting concerns the attempted wire transfer from the joint account ending in 4421, the documentation submitted in support of that transfer, and Mrs. Cox's dispute of authorization. Marlene made a soft sound. This is really unnecessary. Families should not be discussed like bank errors. Patricia did not look at her. We are not here to discuss family feelings, she said. We are here to discuss documents. Adrian sat across from me. He folded his hands on the table and gave me the look he used when he wanted me to remember better times. Gianna, he said gently, I hate that it got this far. It. Not what I did. Not what happened to you. It. I looked at Patricia. She gave the smallest nod. I turned back to Adrian. I am here to state my position clearly. I did not authorize the 209 or 684.73 wire transfer. I did not sign the capital contribution authorization. I did not sign the operating agreement. I did not agree to be a managing member of Cox Legacy Holdings, LLC. I did not sign or approve any personal guarantee. The room went still. Adrian's face tightened. That sounds rehearsed. It is accurate, Patricia said. Marlene leaned forward. Gianna, sweetheart, no one is trying to hurt you. Adrian carried too much alone, yes, but he was trying to build something for the whole family. Elaine opened her folder. Before we proceed, I need to confirm for the bank's records that the funds remain unreleased. The wire was flagged due to the enhanced verification note Mrs. Cox placed on the account and the size of the transfer relative to the balance. Devin looked at Adrian. So the money's still there. Adrian did not answer him. Mr. Coleman spoke for the first time. The bank has not completed its review. Nothing said in this meeting should be understood as a determination of criminal or civil liability. Our purpose is to document the dispute and preserve relevant information. Marlene's lips pressed together. She did not like words she could not soften. Adrian turned to me. You placed a verification note without telling me, yes. On our account, yes. He laughed once under his breath. So you were planning this? No, I said. I was protecting myself from this. That landed harder than I expected. Devin looked down at the table. Keisha closed her eyes briefly. Patricia opened her binder. Let's walk through the documents, she said. Adrian's expression changed. Patricia with respect. I'm not sure turning my marriage into a deposition helps anybody. This is not a deposition, Patricia said. It is also not a marriage counseling session. She placed the first page on the table. My client's work calendar shows she was in a hospital capacity planning meeting from 1:30 p.m. to 3:00 p.m. on the date the capital contribution authorization was electronically signed at 2:14 p.m. I remembered that meeting so clearly now. The glare of the projector. The director of surgical services asking about recovery beds. My own voice discussing staffing ratios while someone else turned my name into consent. Patricia placed the next page down. Internal message timestamp at 2:12 p.m. Email sent by Gianna at 2:17 p.m. Meeting attendance log. Recording file. Adrian's jaw shifted. Marlene said, people can sign things during meetings. I looked at her then. Not things they have never seen. Patricia continued before Marlene could answer. Next. The completed signature email was found in Mrs. Cox's archive folder, not her inbox. She states she did not move it there. Her email activity shows an unknown Windows login from Durham the night before the document was completed. Devin's face changed. Not much, but enough. Patricia placed another page down. Mrs. Cox has also documented that an old business number associated with Mr. Cox was still listed as a recovery option on her email account. Adrian sat back. That was from years ago. She knows that. I know it was from years ago, I said. I do not know why my email was opened from Durham before my signature appeared on LLC documents. Adrian's eyes flicked to Devin. Keisha saw it. So did I. Patricia placed the operating agreement on the table next. This document lists Gianna Cox as managing member of Cox Legacy Holdings, LLC. The contact email on the filing is Mr. Cox's business email, not Mrs. Cox's. The mailing address is the marital home. Mrs. Cox states she was never contacted, never attended any LLC meeting, and never agreed to serve as managing member. Russell Gaines joined by speakerphone at Elaine's request. His voice came through slightly tinny. For the record, Elaine said. Mr. Gaines. You are the commercial broker associated with the Durham warehouse transaction. Yes, Russell said. I'm the broker representing the property opportunity. Patricia leaned slightly toward the phone. Mr. Gaines, did Adrian Cox represent to you that Gianna Cox had agreed to participate in Cox Legacy Holdings LLC? A pause. Yes, Russell said. My understanding from Mr. Cox was that his wife was aware and on board as part of the family investment group. Adrian's face stayed still, but one hand closed slowly around the edge of the table. Did you ever speak with me? I asked. No, Mrs. Cox. I did not. Did I ever email you? No. Did I ever attend a call meeting, walkthrough, or document review? Not to my knowledge. Thank you, Patricia said. Russell cleared his throat. For what it's worth, I told Adrian all member approvals had to be clean before closing. I was very clear about that. Marlene's eyes moved sharply toward Adrian. Clean. There was that word again. Patricia ended the call after confirming Russell would preserve his records. Then she placed the personal guarantee on the table. Devin stared at it like he had never seen the full document before. What is that? He asked. Adrian said. It was part of the lender review. Patricia looked at Devin. It is a personal guarantee listing Gianna Cox as a guarantor. Devin's mouth opened slightly. Keisha turned toward him. You told me it was just investment paperwork. I thought it was, Devin said. Marlene straightened. Everyone is acting like Adrian invented this out of greed. He was trying to save his brother's company. Devin has children, employees, a mortgage. Do any of you understand what happens if this falls apart? I looked at her carefully. I understand exactly what happens when people are desperate, I said. They look for someone they can afford to sacrifice. Her face flushed. That is cruel. No, I said. Cruel was deciding I would not fight once it was done. The words changed the room. Marlene froze. Adrian looked at me. Devin looked at Keisha. Patricia placed the screenshot on the table. Use Gianna's profile. She won't fight family once it's done. Marlene did not reach for it. She only stared. For the first time since I had known her, she had no polished sentence ready. Devin whispered, Mom. Marlene's lips parted. That was taken out of context. Keisha gave a tired laugh. Not amused. Exhausted. What context makes that better? She asked. Everyone looked at her. Keisha's hands were clasped in her lap, but her voice did not shake. I saw Adrian at Devin's office, she said. On the computer. Gianna's email was open. He closed it when I walked in. Adrian turned toward her. Keisha. No, she said. I'm done being scared of saying one true sentence. Devin stared at her like he did not recognize his own wife. Keisha looked at him, and the sadness in her face was deeper than anger. You knew she hadn't agreed, she said. Maybe you didn't know every document. Maybe you let Adrian handle the details because it was easier, but you knew Gianna wasn't sitting at that table with you. Devin swallowed. He did not deny it. That silence was another document. Adrian leaned forward, his voice controlled but strained. I used Devin's computer because my laptop was having issues. Yes, I accessed Gianna's email because I needed tax information for our household profile. This is being twisted. Patricia looked at him. Did Gianna give you permission to access her email for Cox Legacy Holdings documents? Adrian said nothing. Mr. Coleman wrote something on his pad. Elaine's expression remained professional, but her eyes were sharp. Adrian finally said, She would have understood if everyone hadn't poisoned this. I felt something in me settle. There it was again. Not denial, not apology, not accountability. She would have understood, meaning he knew I had not. Adrian, I said quietly, you didn't want my understanding. You wanted my signature. His face twisted with something close to grief. You think I wanted to be here, he said. You think I wanted to beg my wife in front of a banker? Devin was drowning. The lawsuit was going to ruin him. Mom put in what little she had. I had already borrowed against my business line. The seller was about to walk. We needed one clean asset profile. One. One, I repeated. He realized what he had said too late. One clean asset profile. Not one partner. Not one conversation. Not one agreement. Me. Devin stared at Adrian. You borrowed against your business line. Adrian closed his eyes. Marlene turned sharply. Adrian. He rubbed his forehead. It was temporary. How much? Devin asked. That's not relevant. How much? Adrian looked around the room, cornered by the people he had been trying to impress. I used $18,600 from the joint account last year to cover interest and extension fees tied to the project, he said. I was going to put it back after closing. The room seemed to tilt. Last year. Before the warehouse dinner. Before the signature packet. Before the $209 684.73 wire. Elaine looked through her folder and pulled out another page. That may correspond to a transfer we identified during the account review, she said. My breath caught. Adrian looked at her as if she had betrayed him personally. Elaine remained calm. The transaction was categorized at the time in a way that did not trigger review. Given today's dispute, Mrs. Cox may wish to examine it. Marlene covered her mouth. Devin pushed back from the table, slightly overwhelmed now that his rescue story had begun turning into a chain of hidden debts. Keisha sat very still. Patricia turned to me. Gianna, state your position for the record. I looked at Adrian. I thought about all the times he had called me strong, as if strength meant permission to take more from me. I thought about Marlene's dining room, the iced tea, the polished gilt. I thought about Devin's fear, Keisha's silence, Monique's couch, Elaine's steady voice, Patricia's yellow pad. Then I said it clearly. I do not authorize release of the wire. I will not ratify prior consent. I do not consent to my name being used by Cox Legacy Holdings, LLC. I do not accept any role as managing member. I do not accept any personal guarantee. I want my name removed from all filings, applications, and transaction documents. I want all records preserved. And any future communication about this goes through Patricia Lane. Adrian's face went pale with anger. So that's it? He asked. No, I said. That's the beginning of cleaning up what you did. For once, nobody corrected my tone. Elaine slid the additional transaction record across the table toward Patricia, who reviewed it before handing me a copy. The amount was $18,600. The description was vague enough that I remembered it instantly. Adrian had told me it covered home repairs, insurance adjustments, and a contractor deposit after a storm damaged part of our roofline. I had been busy at work. He had sent me a neat summary. I had believed him. Patricia touched the page lightly. We'll review this separately, she said, but I was already reading the receiving account. It was not a roofing contractor. It was tied to a loan servicing account connected to the warehouse project. Adrian had taken from the foundation before he tried to empty it. Elaine's voice was gentle when she spoke. Mrs. Cox, there was one transfer last year you may want to review. I looked up at Adrian. This time he looked away first. For a long time I thought betrayal would have one clear center. One lie. One transfer. One signature. One moment where everything before it still looked real, and everything after it became damaged. But sitting in Patricia Lane's office the morning after the bank meeting with the $18,600 transaction printed in front of me, I understood something different. Betrayal can be a pattern that starts small enough to explain away. The transfer Elaine flagged from the year before had not looked suspicious when it happened. Adrian had told me it was for repairs after a storm insurance adjustments and a contractor deposit. At the time, one section of our roofline really had needed work. We had talked about gutters. We had talked about moisture near the upstairs window. There had been enough truth around the lie to make the lie easy to swallow. That was one of Adrian's gifts, rarely invented from nothing. He placed false things beside real things until they blended. Patricia spread the documents across her desk, the old transfer, the wire attempt, the LLC filing the operating agreement, the personal guarantee, the screenshots from Keisha, the email from Russell Gaines, and the bank's preservation notes. This is the pattern we will focus on, she said. I sat across from her, tired in a way sleep could not fix. The $18,600 went where exactly I asked. Based on what Elaine provided, it appears tied to a loan servicing account connected to the warehouse project. We'll request additional records through the proper process, but it does not appear to be a roofing contractor. I looked down at the paper again. $18,600. Not almost all our savings. Not the kind of number that stops your breathing the way 209 or 684.73 does. But that almost made it worse. It was the test amount. The amount Adrian could hide under household language. The amount he could explain if questioned. The amount small enough to make me feel dramatic if I pushed too hard. I remembered that month clearly now. I had been working 12-hour days because 2 department managers had resigned within the same pay period. Adrian had sent me one of his neat summaries. Roofline repair deposit, insurance deductible adjustment, emergency contractor scheduling. I had glanced at it between meetings and written back. Thanks for handling it. That sentence now felt like a bruise. Patricia must have seen it on my face. Gianna, she said you relied on your spouse's representation about a household expense. That does not make you careless. It makes the representation important. I nodded, but part of me still wanted to go back and shake the woman I had been. Ask for the invoice. Call the contractor. Check the account. Stop apologizing for wanting proof. But healing does not begin by hating the version of you who survived with the information she had. Over the next 3 months, my life became less cinematic and more exhausting than people imagined justice to be. There was no single courtroom scene where a judge slammed a gavel and declared me right. There was paperwork, calls, certified letters, revised statements, legal language I had to read twice, bank forms, credit freezes, password resets. Long evenings on Monique's couch with my laptop balanced on my knees while I answered Patricia's questions line by line. The bank kept the $209,684.73 wire from being released. Because I had placed the verification note in advance and denied authorization clearly when Elaine called, the money never left the joint account for Cox Legacy Holdings, LLC. That fact became the anchor I held onto when everything else felt unstable. Patricia moved quickly to dispute my involvement in the company documents. She sent formal notice that I had not consented to serve as managing member, had not authorized a capital contribution, had not signed the operating agreement, and had not agreed to any personal guarantee. She demanded that my name be removed from Cox Legacy Holdings LLC filings and all transaction materials connected to the warehouse project. The personal guarantee became the most urgent issue. Patricia explained it to me in plain English again, because I needed to hear it more than once if allowed to stand. That document could make a future creditor argue that I personally backed the company's obligations. Even if I ultimately won a dispute, being pulled into that fight could damage my credit, my borrowing ability, and my peace for years. So we attacked it early. Not emotionally. Procedurally. Patricia provided the timeline showing I was in a recorded hospital meeting at the exact time my electronic signature was supposedly completed. She referenced the archived email, the unknown Durham login, the recovery number tied to Adrian Keisha's screenshots, and the lack of any direct communication between me and Russell Gaines. She also requested the audit trail from the signing platform through the proper channel. Adrian's attorney responded at first with careful language. Miscommunication. Marital funds. Implied consent. Family investment. No malicious intent. Patricia read the letter silently, then looked at me and said, "They are trying to make bad documentation sound like bad communication." That became another line I wrote down. Bad documentation was not bad communication. A forged signature was not a misunderstanding. A hidden LLC role was not a marriage issue. A personal guarantee I never approved was not a family sacrifice. A St. Tonner's $600 transfer disguised as home repair was not financial leadership. It was misuse. Adrian called me only once after Patricia sent the formal notices. I did not answer. He left a voicemail that I listened to in Patricia's office. His voice was hoarse. "I know you think I'm some kind of criminal now," he said. "I know everyone's making this look like I set out to hurt you. But I was scared, Gianna. Devin was drowning. Mom was looking at me like I was supposed to fix it. I had already put money into the project. I couldn't let it collapse. I thought if I could get it closed, I could make it right before you ever had to worry." I closed my eyes. There it was again. The part of him that sounded human. The part that made me remember the man who brought soup when I had the flu, who sat beside me at my father's memorial service, who once told me I deserved a life that did not make me earn love through exhaustion. I believed he had been scared. I believed Devin's failure terrified him. I believed Marlene's expectations crushed him. I believed his image as the dependable man had become a prison he built and then could not admit he hated. But none of that returned my consent. Patricia asked if I wanted to keep listening. I nodded. Adrian continued. "I'm asking you not to destroy me. I'll sign something. I'll repay what I can. But don't drag my mother and Devin through this. Don't make this public. We can settle it quietly." Quietly. That word stayed in the room after the voicemail ended. I had once mistaken quiet for peace. Now I understood quiet could also be where people buried the truth. "I don't need public revenge," I told Patricia. "But I'm not signing silence that protects the lie." She nodded. "That's a workable boundary. Eventually, through attorneys, we reached a civil resolution on the financial pieces that could be resolved without giving up my rights. The 209 or 684.73 remained protected from the warehouse transfer. A portion that was traceable to my condo proceeds and my work bonus was moved under an agreement that prevented Adrian from accessing it while we separated our finances. The $18,600 was addressed through a repayment plan, with part of it returned upfront after Adrian liquidated a business investment he had not told me about. That discovery did not surprise me anymore. By then, surprise had been replaced by documentation. My name was removed from Cox Legacy Holdings, LLC. Patricia obtained written confirmation that I held no managing member role, no ownership obligation, and no authority in the company. The disputed personal guarantee was withdrawn from the transaction file because the parties involved could not rely on it once formal notice of unauthorized signature and supporting evidence existed. Russell Gaines distanced himself quickly. In a letter through his office, he stated that he had relied on representations made by Adrian regarding my participation. Patricia told me not to celebrate that too much. Everyone protects themselves when the light turns on, she said. The warehouse closing collapsed. Devin did lose the deal. His company did not disappear overnight, but the lawsuit he had been trying to outrun became unavoidable. He had to downsize, sell equipment, and negotiate with vendors instead of pretending one dramatic acquisition would rescue everything. Months earlier, I might have felt responsible for that. Now I understood the difference between causing pain and refusing to fund denial. Devin sent me an apology in writing. Patricia reviewed it before I responded. It was not perfect, but it was the first thing from him that did not ask me for money, silence, or understanding. He wrote, "I knew enough to know you weren't being treated right, and I let my fear matter more than your consent. I am sorry." I sat with that sentence for a long time. Then I wrote back only, "I appreciate the apology. I hope you make different choices moving forward." That was all he was entitled to. Marlene was harder. She called from different numbers until Patricia sent a written notice that all communication had to go through counsel. Then she sent a letter to my office. Not email. A real letter handwritten in her careful script. Gianna. No mother wants to see her sons suffer. Maybe I pushed too hard. Maybe I believed too much in what Adrian said he could fix. But you need to understand that this family was already fragile. I read that line 3 times. This family was already fragile. As if fragility were permission. As if I had been furniture they could break to hold up the house. She did not truly apologize. She came close enough to want credit for it, but not close enough to reach accountability. She wrote that she hoped I would not punish everyone forever for one desperate season. I did not respond. That was new for me. Silence when chosen freely can be a boundary too. Adrian and I began legal separation proceedings. I moved out before the house felt like a museum of things I used to believe. For a few weeks, I lived with Monique. Then I found a 1-bedroom apartment on the west side of Raleigh with big windows, a small balcony, and old hardwood floors that creaked in the morning. It was not as impressive as the brick house. It was safer. I bought a blue sofa without asking anyone if it matched a long-term plan. I put my hospital badge in a ceramic bowl by the door. I opened cabinets and knew exactly what was inside because I had put everything there myself. I slept badly at first, then better. Then one Saturday I woke up and realized I had not checked my phone before breathing. That felt like freedom. I also started therapy, not because Adrian had made me weak, but because he had found weak places that existed before him, places built by a childhood where being useful made me loved, where asking for clarity made me selfish, where the stable daughter was expected to absorb every crisis without changing her face. My therapist asked me once, "What did money represent in your marriage?" I said safety. Then I thought about it. No, I corrected myself. Access. I thought sharing money meant sharing a life. Adrian thought sharing money meant access. That was the wound. Not just dollars. Access. Access to my account. Access to my name. Access to my credit. Access to my guilt. Access to my instinct to rescue. So I rebuilt my life around closed doors that opened only from my side. New accounts. New passwords, new beneficiaries, new emergency contacts, new rules at work. I remained who I was, calm, capable, sometimes too serious in budget meetings. But even there, something shifted. I stopped apologizing before asking necessary questions. I stopped cushioning every boundary with a paragraph of reassurance. When a vendor sent incomplete numbers, I said, "Please resend the full documentation," and did not add, "Sorry to bother you." It is strange how one betrayal can teach you the shape of every other place you were shrinking. Keisha texted me 2 months after the bank meeting. I stared at her name for a while before opening it. I left with the kids for a few weeks. I don't know what happens next, but I wanted you to know that watching you tell the truth made me realize silence wasn't keeping peace. It was just keeping me scared. Thank you. I cried when I read that. I read, not because it fixed anything. It did not. Keisha had her own road ahead, and I could not walk it for her. But some part of me needed to know that the truth had not only destroyed a lie, it had opened a window for someone else. Adrian signed the separation paperwork on a rainy Thursday. He looked older when I saw him at Patricia's office. Less polished. Still handsome, still composed in public, but worn around the eyes. For a moment, when our attorneys stepped out to make copies, we sat in the conference room alone. He looked at me and said, "I never thought you'd actually leave." That sentence told me he still did not fully understand. "I didn't leave because of money," I said. "I left because you believed my consent was an obstacle." He looked down. "I'm sorry," he said. Maybe he meant it. Maybe he meant the consequences. Maybe he meant the version of sorry he was capable of carrying. I did not interrogate it. "I hope you become someone who never does this again," I said. He swallowed. "Do you forgive me?" There it was. The question people ask when they want pain converted into access. I looked at him for a long moment. "I'm working on not carrying you," I said. "That's what I'm working on." It was the truest answer I had. The last call from Elaine Whitaker came on a quiet morning 3 months after the first one. I was walking through a small park near my apartment before work coffee in hand leaves wet from overnight rain. When her name appeared on my phone, my body still reacted. Not as strongly as before, but enough that I stopped beside a bench. "Good morning, Mrs. Cox," Elaine said. I almost corrected her. I had started using Gianna Cox professionally still, but in my private life the name felt complicated. One day I would decide what to do with it. Not that morning. "Good morning," I said. "I'm calling to confirm the security setup on your individual accounts is complete. Your cell phone is the only verification number. Your email has been updated. No external authorized users. No joint access. The fraud alert notes remain attached as requested." I looked across the park at a woman jogging with a golden retriever, at an older man reading on a bench, at sunlight breaking through the trees in soft pieces. No emergency. No missing money. No husband texting me not to embarrass him. No company I had never heard of waiting to swallow my name. Just confirmation. Only mine. "Thank you, Elaine," I said. "You're welcome," she replied. Then after a pause she added, "Take care of yourself, Gianna." "I am," I said, and for the first time in a long time, it was not a promise. It was evidence. Financial betrayal does not always begin with someone emptying an account. Sometimes it begins much earlier, when someone makes you feel selfish for asking simple questions. When you are taught to be the strong one, the dependable one, the one who can survive anything, people may start treating your strength like permission. But love is not permission. Marriage is not permission. Family is not permission to use your name, your credit, your savings, or your silence. What I learned is that boundaries are not revenge. Documentation is not cruelty. Asking for clarity is not betrayal. Sometimes the most peaceful thing you can do is stop giving access to people who only respect you when you are useful to them. Forgiveness, if it ever comes, does not mean reopening the same door. It does not mean handing back the keys to your life just because someone finally regrets the consequences. If this story made you think about trust, money, marriage, or the pressure to protect family at your own expense, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting yourself? I'd really like to hear your perspective, and if you want more stories about betrayal, justice, boundaries, and healing, subscribe and stay with this channel. This is a fictional story created for entertainment, education, and reflection.